What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Moving with Life. Andy here. Hopefully you've had a good week so far. I did post 3 episodes last week, just because the way things kind of felt. I kind of fell into a flow, and then for this week, I almost didn't record. I almost didn't record, but I said I should record, and it's interesting because I ended up falling into a podcast that I hadn't heard yet, and I basically spent my whole day kind of like listening to it. It's like a 2.5 hour podcast, and I spent most of the day chugging through it, re-listening to certain parts, and re-listening again after that to even more specific parts. But the reason why I listened to the guy that I listened to was Naval Ravikant, who was on Joe Rogan's podcast 1309. It was sometime last year. And there's a piece of the expert, and I was trying to look for the actual excerpts on Instagram, so I could just put the link in the show notes, and then you could see what I'm talking about. And then I was going to put the link to the full show, if it entertained your thought at all. But one of the things he says on there, where did I write? Oh, no, I didn't write it down. I put it in my phone. But he mentions a Confucius quote, and the quote is, "We have 2 lives, and the second begins when we realize we only have one." And that one, I'm like, oh man, how? Because I've heard about him on Tim Ferriss. I've heard about him on different. I have nothing here. I've heard about him in general. I used to follow his podcast, but then he had stopped posting. So, like listeners and all our me included, our attention spans are very directed. And if you're not producing content, i.e., even me, falling. If I were to fall off, whenever I do fall off, if I miss a week for whatever reason, there's multiple reasons, but that have come up. But either way, I stopped following him on podcasting because he never replied. He had stopped posting at some point, and then because of that, I didn't know he had started posting again. And his pieces are really short, and I re-listened to his first one that he posted. When did he post it? Posted it back in 2019, so May 5th, 2019, so almost 2 years ago. It's titled "Seek Wealth, Not Money or Status," and I'm gonna go into a little bit what he talks about there. But either way, going back to the genesis of today's episode, was just the fact of hearing that quote by Confucius, and he talks, and it's like, and it made me think, and in me thinking, like, man, I need to listen to his whole podcast and see what else he's talked about. And really, honestly, if I sent it to, that's what I did. I didn't save. I sent it to my buddies, my friend. Well, I sent it to Brian, Freddie, and my cousin Frank. And I said, hey, if you listen to the first 5 minutes, you might listen to the whole thing, because that's kind of the way I felt. And like 2 minutes in, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna keep listening, because I wasn't sure what his direction, what his approach was to interviews and just talk, and Joe Rogan podcast situation. It's a conversation, and Joe's really good at steering conversation. And so one of the things he actually mentions in the beginning of episode 1309 is specialization is for insects. Like he got that from a friend, and now I'm taking it from him. But it goes back to what we're talking about with the talent war. Where special operators in the military are they are generalists. They have specialties, but they're generalists first, because they have to be able to substitute roles. They have to be able to fill in the gap in case something happens. Something worst case scenario type situations where something happens, and now you have to like learn how to reset the radio, or redirect traffic, whatever that may look like, radio traffic, so on and so forth. But so it kind of tied into that, and I was like, man, so I listened to the whole thing, and it's really good, and I could go in. I guess I could, because one thing that I kind of wish I had done now, now that we're at the end of the day today, as far as recording this episode, I wish I would have just sat down and like written notes. But I was so in tune that it's like I didn't think about it till way after. And I'll probably actually still do that. But to just bring up some vital things that I've already done. So the Confucius quote, and that's a big one. So do we really, or when, whenever that may be, when do we realize that we only have one life, so we actually maximize it versus like living in a fear or consuming too much media, consuming too much news, especially like in today's day and age, there's a lot of negative news. Like I'm talking about like mainstream media, but that's how they're keeping us. That's how they're keeping us like locked in. Like, oh, did you hear about? Did you hear who died here? Did you hear about this accident? Did you hear about what that person said about that other person? And it's like all this noise that's out there, and then trying to do less of that. Because even one of my goals for 2021 is produce more than I consume. Do things more than I consume. And frankly, I consume plenty of media, but it's mostly podcasts. I've mentioned that over, and I'll probably keep mentioning it, at least for now, because it is relevant, because it's relevant to me, even making me continuing doing a podcast while I'm able to, and so it's like cool. And then so I listened to Naval's first episode, and I guess his coworker, his partner from his businesses, the topic was, what's the difference between wealth, money, and status? And so he goes into it. And it's actually only 6-minute video, so I can probably put that episode in the show notes. The point. So he brings up wealth first. So he defines wealth as assets that are earning while you're sleeping. And some quick examples that I was able to come up with, like Bitcoin. So like in Bitcoin investing in general, and that's why I try to explain it to other young adults and other people in general when they're thinking about getting into investing, or I talk to them about it, but they're not sure how to do it, why to do it, or they're scared to do it because they're scared to lose money. The best way I explain it is it's actually that. So while I'm asleep, so let's just say I own a Bitcoin. I don't, but let's just say I do. The whole time that the regular market's closed, like however trades are done, and see that's some stuff that I don't know about the trading and all that stuff. But the point is that little needle's moving. It's moving. And if you look at it from 2010, and me and my friends and me and several people have talked about like the fact of like if you would have invested, let's just say $100 back in 2010, I think it was $100 then, and especially leading to now, especially like this past couple year or two, maybe how it's like just it's just crazy how much it's gone up. Anyways, the point is that is creating wealth. It's you are making the money that you put in, all this investing and trading and stuff that are going on in the background. It's making you money, and you are an investor now. You are an investor into this thing. S&P 500. It's an index. Top 500 companies in the world that are in this index, covering oil, tech, health, everything. That's a good one to get in. And if you look at where it's gone from 2017 to now, it hasn't doubled yet, but it's getting close to doubling. Now there's all these underlying factors, all these things that you have to kind of wait and see. But even then, the point to stay on track here, the point is to create your wealth, to create your assets. Owning land is an asset. I'm pretty sure this is probably a good time to just kind of reiterate some of this stuff, because I feel like me and Brian have talked about it. It's come up in conversations on the via podcast. But owning land, because land, generally speaking, for land it goes up, so it's an asset. It's actually making you money. It's good to own land. That's why people buy, let's say, the suites, and they have businesses rent for them. So it's not only the businesses giving them money for the suites and the little offices, but it's also the actual land itself is worth a lot of money, and it grows as time passes. It grows versus a car. You hear generally you'll hear, oh, as soon as you drive the car off the lot, you lose, it goes to have its value. Whether that number is true or not, the point is that land is an asset, a car is a liability, because you're constantly putting money into it. It's not giving you anything back. Yes, it's taking you to work, but you're putting a lot more money in the long term, not counting financing and all that stuff, depending on if you pay for cash or if you pay it on the financing. That's the difference. And I guess something that I'll have to make note for next time is to see how, like, I guess, even though you have a mortgage on a house, the land itself is still worth something. And over time it'll gain money, is the best way I can think about it right now. I'll have to do some research, and I'll have to come back about that. But anyways, to get back on this, so wealth is assets earned while sleeping. So Bitcoin investing, real estate, Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's company. It's they own a lot of land everywhere. And then Naval was talking. He mentioned in that little conversation about wealth, was saying that wealth is the freedom. Wealth is the freedom that me and you look for. We'll say constantly in a macro way of thinking about it, versus like, oh, every single minute, maybe we're not. I'm trying to bring good content to this podcast, so I'm not necessarily thinking about like, oh, my wealth, but I am thinking about, oh, this podcast means something to me, so it's part of my bigger picture. The way he defines money is he says it's a reliable IOU. It's a way for me and you to like, if you're selling me something, I'm going to give you this money, saying, here, I owe you this because you're giving me this microphone. And so then and then I'm going to sell you this little journal, and you're going to give me this paper, this reliable IOU, in exchange for this. So that's what he defines money as. And he goes into detail as far as I'm still trying to understand it. I've heard it a couple times, actually 3 or 4 times now. But I'm trying to understand the way he fully defines money, because he goes into us as human beings, how we strive to earn more money, but sometimes it leads to like status is the next part, but it leads us to like status. So like as we gain more money, we spend more money, versus let's just say another. So the other way would be to get that freedom is that, let's say you work for someone, you make some money, or as you're making money, you start investing it, you start buying land, you open your own business. You starting to create your wealth. You're starting to create that freedom, that long-term, freedom that you would gain from earning money from one place, saving it, investing it, which again includes real estate, business, creating your own business, your own product, service. Vice. The next part, so status. So really, this little podcast that he had is it's wealth versus status, and that's the way I saw it, and that's the way I see it. Because a lot of people use money to define themselves, and so in using money to define yourself, you have your Lamborghini, you have your Ferrari, you have your Mercedes Benz. You go from a Nissan Sentra, you get some money, and then you spend $250,000 on a car. Vice, starting a business with that $250,000, where that business, if you dedicate it and you develop it correctly with $250,000, which is actually it's a pretty good capital start to start a business. Over time, you'll see that money circulate and come back to you, versus, and let's just say you buy a Ferrari. I don't know prices on cars, but let's just say you buy a $250,000 Ferrari, whatever model, and make that, or whatever model that'll get you. and you use it, which is cool. You're using it, you're showing it off on Instagram, you're showing it off on Facebook. I'm glad I don't have Facebook. You're out in the town, cool. It's giving you a status. You are now you were at, let's say, at this level with Nissan Sentra, and now you made some money. Now you bought a Ferrari, and now you feel like you're at this level. Cool. I mean, I'm not judging. I'm just trying to explain this to hopefully gravitate all of us, myself included, because I'm narrowing some of my goals, re-engineering how I think about my goals. So I'm also, this is a big work in progress, and it's cool that I'm glad I came across this podcast, because now it's like, oh yeah, and now that kind of makes sense. So instead of aiming for a bunch of like little things which I want to accomplish anyways, it's like, hey, there's a few macro things that are the most important to me, so I'm going to try to aim towards that. And as I go along the way, as I'm learning and discovering new things, and cool, I'll start making more checks off those boxes of other things that I want to accomplish. But status is a ranking, and wealth is a positive sum game versus status that's a zero sum game. Politics is a type of status. Sports also, because in sports there's a winner and there's a loser, and that's how status is kind of defined. Because in order to gain status, that means someone has to go below you, and that's in general. So you have, let's say F1, you have your top 20 players, top 20 racers, and everybody has a ranking. So in that case, that's a type of status. The best in F1 versus the least best, which is top 20. I mean, top 20 in the world is still pretty damn good, but the point is the definitions here. And so one thing that I think Joe Rogan said, how do you get out of that? And he says, a lot of it goes to, you have to learn, you have to figure it out on your own. Like Joe Rogan, Jay Leno, some of these guys, even Brendan Schaub, like they like cars, so they kind of I'll say kinda very loosely, but they kind of collect cars, but it's because it's their toys. It's they do enjoy it. They're not looking to sell those cars. I'll take a leap and say that they're not the cars that they own are priceless anyways. Like they wouldn't want to sell them even for the right price. Like it's theirs, it's their babies, it's their that's what it's like me with guitars and even podcast gear. I'm trying to upgrade my podcast gear and doing different things. It's still kind of revolves around. I guess the podcast gear was like around the world, but like for them, their cars aren't, or at least okay, for Joe Rogan's sake, he said, well, they're just toys. They're things that he likes to do that. So it's like, okay, cool. That's good. He's not using his cars for his status. He has cars and buys cars and vehicles because he likes the way they look. He likes the way they run. He said I like the machine. I like the machinery behind. I like the machines. I like them as machines. The way they work, the way they function, the progression that vehicles have made from back in the day to now to present. And then and obviously talk about Elon Musk. Not about cars, but just in general. So yeah, those are probably the main. That's probably the main thing that I feel like I could bring today. Like I said, I was kind of fighting myself on, am I gonna talk today? Am I not gonna talk today? What can I bring? And then again, I fell into this podcast. I'm like, oh, this is really good. And the cool thing about like his own podcast, like for the most part, I know there's a couple of interviews that I haven't seen the time length of them, but like his posts for the beginning are very short. Like this first one that I listened to, it's 6 minutes long, and I listened to it at 1.5 times speed. So it's 3 minutes versus 6 minutes or whatever that is. Maybe, or is it 4.5? It's 4.5 or 3 minutes. Well, no, 2 times would be 3 minutes. So 4.5. Versus 6. That's just me. That's my preference. I've tried to go kind of faster here and there, but like I'm really comfortable at 1.5. So that's kind of just me. That's so I can consume the information, and then if I want to re-listen, I can just re-listen to it. And I'm actually not taking the full 6 minutes to do it. Every once in a while I will, but not all the time. I think maybe I think also like bringing up wealth and assets that are earning while sleeping is the fact of like what the market's doing right now. If you look at the investment, I had someone text me recently. It's like, hey, how do you know when to invest? And no, how do you know what to invest in and when should I invest? And I said, and maybe I mentioned this already, but I can't remember. Anyway, point I'm gonna say it again because I've been trying to encourage people in person to go and start. And the best time to start is now. Now do some research. I encourage doing some research. Um, Everybody that I talk to does some type of research to in some capacity. Whether it's like I keep it pretty simple. I use Yahoo Finance and my laptop, and I'm kind of there like digging to see about these companies, and then I get these little the widgets from Yahoo as well. So like they have like little news feeds that come up to me or show up on my phone. I have other, we'll say colleagues and friends. Well, me and Freddie talked about it on here. But like colleagues and then Freddie and some other friends that they all have kind of their own way of doing things. But honestly, it all revolves around doing the work a little. The work. It all revolves around reading a little bit. Getting off the phone or even using your phone. Like, I mean, if you have Robinhood or Webull or whoever. You can use those platforms to actually look up news behind the stocks that you might want to invest in. I'm not going to give any advice over here if I haven't already, but for right now I'm not. But I do encourage building wealth, and even if that means having a job. And he and Naval goes deep into like having a job and renting your time out for a paycheck for what's the other word for a paycheck, but also for salary. I don't know why it took me so long to think of that word. You rent your time out for a salary, you get paid, and cool, and then you go and spend it. And if we can, and right now because we're going, because the market's going so high, it's like you almost want to sit on cash, but it's like still, I encourage you just to start. And do some research, do some readings, and then go from there. And then if you have friends that are already doing it, like I said, me and probably 3-4 of the people that I know that are doing this, just investing in general. It's like we kind of at different points in time. Me and Freddie it's already been a month since we talked. It's probably about a month since we talked. And then I have some other colleagues that we'll just talk, and then investing comes up, and it's like, oh, what have you seen? Oh, what have you seen? And then it kind of turns into that conversation. And I guess also is that for us, at least for me, and I'll vouch to go on a limb and say for a lot of others too, is like it's also not boring for us, and see that's one thing is that maybe it shouldn't be boring either, because also like I think we see it as like not an end goal, but it's something to strive for. We have wealth goals that we want to accomplish, and so this is one of the ways that we're able to do that. We'll start now, and so if it seems boring to you, I hope it doesn't. But in the case it does, it's like, well, jump in. You might find that you like tech, more than you thought. You might find, or whatever. There's health, there's tech, there's general business, oil, oil production. But even then, like, there's so many fitness is one. You can find, because you have Nike, you have Under Armour, you have all these companies. So even if maybe you don't want to have like this big portfolio of things, if you find that one thing that does interest you, and you do a little reading and you see because you can find what companies have made. Generally, you can find where their price is at in the stock market. So if you find those gems for you that work, that do make you want to build, your wealth, and then gain. You gain after every so often. You see those dividends start coming in, and then you see dividends over years, and that's where the real that's where the real paycheck comes from. As far as investing, I'm myself still trying to figure out some things as far as creating my wealth, but definitely investing is one of the big ones that I really leech on right now, is trying to find what works for me, what I'm comfortable with, and then keep building that, until I feel like I don't want to anymore, or feel like I don't need to, or something comes up that it changes my mind about it. But for now, that's what I'm doing. So yeah, I think I'm done for today. I think this is a good. I'm gonna close it out here. Wealth versus status. You can use money to build your wealth or build your status. Status is not a bad thing. It just shouldn't be your priority, because at different times of our lives, I think we'll realize that it's not that important, versus that freedom, that wealth that we have, that freedom to not have to wake up at whatever time in the morning to go serve, work for somebody else. And that goes into, creating a business and so on and so forth. But, yeah, it's something that it's already been crossing my mind, and trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to go about this? And I don't have any answers, they're just thoughts, and just constant thoughts. So that's where I'm at as well. So it's not like I'm coming in here trying to preach. It's like, no, like these are just things that I'm learning myself, trying to understand myself, to start creating my own definitions, and then execute on those definitions. So with that, I'm still working on the talent war. I'm still reading 1984. I actually need to read. What time is it? Yeah, it's still kind of early. So so I'm still working on that. I'm almost done. I'm almost halfway, or a little over halfway done. But I'm like right there. Yeah. I think I'm a little over halfway. Anyways, still working on that. Still working on my goals and my things that I want to accomplish in my life, and so on. So take care of each other. Take care of yourself mentally and physically. Enjoy whatever you're doing. If you're not enjoying it, then you need. Those are the things that that I'm trying to bring to this conversation. As far as like, hey, well then you should maybe consider rethinking about it. And you can do it at any age. I've talked about this before. Sam Walton is a great example. The KFC guy is a great example. Where you can always you never know. It's never too late to develop something that you think is so minimal, but it might be something big that could turn into something huge. So don't sell yourself short. Sell yourself short. Money, status, wealth. Sell yourself. Don't sell yourself short. And it's like Confucius said. What did he say? We have two lives, and the second begins when we realize we only have one. And with that, I'll see you all very, very soon.